All right, welcome to another Sunday live stream. Today we're talking about why do I need to dose fertilizer if and still change water? That's really the question here. All right, so I see this question pop up a lot. Usually newer people to the hobby, but sometimes it's even veterans. And really it comes down to what's in the water. Now, why do we dose something like Easy Green? To add things to water, things that plants need, right? So we might need nitrogen or fish poop. Might need phosphates. We might need potassium, trace elements, and all of these things might be present in your water. Maybe you've got well water. Maybe you've got some of this in your tap water. Maybe you've got it from coming in from fish foods, right? So if we feed a flake food, typically a flake food it's not higher end, might have a lot of phosphate in it, and that can lead to a lot of algae. Let me get a little more comfortable here. And we don't necessarily want that. So we want to get things in balance. And so we try and do that by usually changing water, but also testing. And so part of the reason why we change water, even though we're dosing, is to achieve balance, and we can't test for everything. So we recommend that you kind of change water and dose Easy Green based on how much Easy Green is in your water, derived or from Easy Green itself. Because when you put Easy Green in, it's going to have all the essential things that plants need. Now, as plants grow in different plants, some want more potassium, some want less, some want more nitrogen, some want a little bit less. They don't use them all equally for every type of plant. This can lead to deficiencies. So what that means is you might be lacking something in your water. And when that happens, that's a prime example when algae and things like that can build up or your plants start looking bad. And so you kind of have two options, and that is to test like 20 different water parameters. And most people won't do that because the test kits start getting very, very expensive and time consuming. And so the alternative is dosing and then changing water to remove anything that's building up or to replenish things that are missing. So for instance, like Easy Green doesn't have much of the way of hardness minerals in it, right? Because they're really hard to dissolve into water and you just can't pack that much into a small bottle. The best way to replenish that is probably by changing water. If you have any minerals in your tap water, you're going to bring those back in when you change water. Now, you can do it with something like Seachem Equilibrium. You can do it with, crushed coral and other rock additives and things like that. But again, we're testing, we're monitoring, and resetting is usually what we go for because it's easy, right? I do that in the warehouse. I do it in the store. I do it in my own fish room. We do partial water changes every day because we can rely on that. When that keeps happening, we can then dose on top of that to make sure that the nutrients for plants are going in. We're bringing in other things from tap water, which you should analyze your tap water, know what's in it. If you have a bunch of nitrogen, you have a bunch of hardness and all of that, you want to kind of monitor that. And that's why some people might use an RO system, reverse osmosis, take everything out of the water if they got something that's way too bad, and then reconstitute their water with good things. Now, part of the reason we still change water, so even though when we run a whole warehouse full of tanks and we have people dedicated to managing the plants and doing healthy, why would we still change water? Well, part of it is because things build up that we're not testing for. And then two, especially in the store and my fish room, there's other things that we want to remove from water, like maybe hormones from fish breeding, maybe just compounds. Yeah, it's really just compounds we don't test for. And so by continually changing small amounts, we can make sure that doesn't really build up and start inhibiting breeding and things like that. And it allows me to, a good example of this would be when I hatch out live baby brine, I personally don't separate it from the salt water. And I put that salt water in with all of the tanks. Now, if I never changed water, that could lead up to salt buildup. And that's something that the plants aren't really going to consume and take out. But because I use our easy brine shrimp salt, it's got a lot of minerals in it, and I want those minerals to be going in for the plants. And so if I'm changing a little bit of water every day, I might dose brine shrimp, or not dose, but feed brine shrimp, and that brings in a dose of the salt. And that salt has all those micro or trace elements, and that feeds the plants. But then also later in the day, we change a little bit of water. And every day we're changing a little bit of water. And it basically makes it so that it's not that I'm just stacking salt every day. I put some salt in, some changes, put some in. Now, if I never get in there and manually gravel vac or do a different water change, everything builds up over time. And we've got kind of videos and stuff on that. But if you change 50% of your water every week, you're still going to build up in levels typically to the average aquarium. So water changes themselves aren't the magical silver bullet. They're one tool in what you can do besides testing. And live plants really are, they're a piece of that puzzle, and they're an important one, because if you do nothing, plants will usually strip everything out of the water, which is great, keeps our planet alive, cleans up nature for all of nature. But in our aquariums, if we don't keep supplying things, it runs out. Now in nature, like in my pond, we've got leaves going in, we might have a frog that gets in there, we might, you might have seen like, oh my gosh, an animal got in there and died. All of these things add nutrients to that water source over time. Plants are going to consume that, and then they need to be replenished. In our aquariums, we accomplish that with Easy Green or another fertilizer, and we do that so that we don't have to have things dying and that. But don't forget that the food, anything you're putting in, whether it's a piece of wood that's going to be rotting and providing some, whether it's food for the fish, whether it's a plastic decoration where the paint's starting to break down, all of this is in the water. And we hadn't even covered that, different plastics and materials and things and cast off from new maybe decorations. If we never change water, never leaving, unless the plant exports it. And that's really what plants are. They're a way to export nutrients. And so when we trim them, we take those out, it's kind of like doing a water change. So that's why it's important that even though we're dosing fertilizer and we can get those elements from food and other things that would come into the aquarium, we're trying to manage it and keep it consistent. And that's what's very important. And that's one of the reasons why I use an auto feeder in a lot of my fish tanks. Is I want that food to be consistent. Most people don't factor that in when they're trying to balance the aquarium. I don't even talk about it a lot, to be honest. Most people don't factor in that every time they feed a pinch of food, it's slightly different. Every time you go, oh, I'm feeding bloodworms today and not dry food, and then tomorrow I'm going to feed this and not that. Those are all different amounts of elements going into the aquarium each time, and that can lead to a little bit of instability. If you feed bloodworms for 2 weeks, and then you feed flake food for 2 weeks, and then you feed this pellet food for 2 weeks, your plants and your ecosystem in general that you have are going to get different sets of nutrients. And you might find that by feeding a low quality flake food, phosphates through the roof. But then feeding frozen food, if you're rinsing it, which I don't because I'm lazy, but in saltwater world, you rinse it to make sure you're not adding extra nitrogen and things like that to your aquarium. That leads to a much different aquarium. So everything we do from, did I have lotion on my arms before I was getting into my aquarium, to something, got blown in there, to a fish died, to even you buy new fish, they're being fed different food, they come in, they go to the bathroom, they've introduced something new, whether it could be parasites, it could be, just they're eating flake food before, something like that. So everything contributes, and we don't have a really good way to monitor that, because test kits and the time it takes and the amount of aquariums we keep don't lend itself to that. And so that's where I would say change water, dose the main ingredients you need to dose, and judge the plants. And that's how most of us are getting through this hobby. So if you have any questions, let us know in the comments. But otherwise, I'm moving on to the live stream part. All right. So yes, I guess I'll just, we're back from Maui. We went to Maui, did some fun things like blowing glass, played in the ocean a bit, spent a lot of time at the hot tub and the pool. and just kind of rest it up for a couple weeks. So the tank that you guys saw yesterday, I already filmed a little bit of an update. Part of it came back, could not be more pea soup green, and but the plants are growing well, so I threw in a UV sterilizer. We'll get that cleaned up, and it'll start growing a little better. The light was a little strong, I think, so I turned the light down a couple of clicks. But nevertheless, got it started. Pea soup growing. Have I tried the Hobby brine shrimp hatchery? Yes. So it's a little disc with a center hole, I would say, and it's a good way to hatch for one aquarium. Anything more than that, though, I find it not to be enough brine shrimp. And what I don't like about it, for all the things that are good about it, what I don't like about it is it's the same amount of work as if I hatch brine shrimp for 100 aquariums as it is to hatch for one aquarium. And so for me, being that I don't just keep one aquarium, that's why I don't really use it. But I have tested it because it's always fun to test things and figure out what works about a system and what you can implement and what you can know down the road. But yeah, it's, I would say, limited use for my use case. I can't believe it's been 4 years. It's been a while, Jamie. Uh, I think it's like in another month or something like that. I just got a message from YouTube. It'll be 10 years since I've been on YouTube. Now, only like 8 or 9 of those are actually like really being YouTuber. But yeah, so we'll figure out something I'm gonna do. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing for that yet. And then also, like in a few more days, it'll be the 10-year anniversary of signing the lease on a retail store. So that's kind of another crazy, um, metric to have that started this journey. And it's not that it doesn't feel like it's been some time, but it doesn't feel like it's been 10 years, especially when you're less than 40 years old. That's kind of like, oh, wow, that's a fourth of my life I've been doing this. It can't have been that long. And that's just my own retail store. That doesn't count the 5 years before that I was working for someone else and running their store. And then, like the year or two before to that I was keeping fish. So, we're getting close to half my life's been fish almost. It's a little weird to think about because haven't been a lifelong fish keeper. I got in at, like 22-ish or something. I think it was like the year, yeah, well, like maybe like the year or the year after I met my wife. All right. Do I have any experience with dwarf or regular centipede knifefish? No. I just don't know them of that name. The hobby names make it difficult because it's like a lot of people before we went live, because we talked before we go live, have you ever kept this fish? And most times the answer is yes. If you own 200 tanks for the last 10 plus years of your life and you have to keep them full and you own a retail store, you've probably played with just about everything. Now, there's going to be some super rare stuff, but when it comes to like this knife fish, like this regular centipede knife fish, I don't know it by that name. I've caught lots of knife fish out in the wild in Peru. I've kept them in aquariums. I've done a lot with them, but specifically that one, don't know. Um, but when it comes to just kind of experience with knife fish, some are hyper aggressive, some are super laid back. I find that most people run into problems with just keeping them alive long term because they're not good feeders with the types of fish we like to keep them with tetras and all of that. We don't get enough food in there. They want really meaty things like bloodworms and stuff like that. And so what I find is people kind of throw in a couple, 2 or 3 cubes of bloodworms, hope for the best, and after like 3 years later, like, oh, that guy died. Oh, weird. All the other fish kind of grew up. We put more fish in. We didn't adjust the food enough, and it's an accidental like, oh dang, I didn't realize that guy was struggling because they're usually not out and about and super boisterous, and we don't have good examples, and so you don't really see big fat knife fish that are boisterous that are really well done And so you don't know what to compare it to. And so as long as your guy, you see him eat every once in a while, you're going, yeah, my guy's doing okay. But the reality is, um, we don't do a good job, the population in general. So um, if people keep it more as a species only tank or really baby it, I feel like they do a lot better, which most people don't. It's kind of the add-in fish, for myself included. So have I kept and grown out a Faka puffer prior to Mabu? No, I'm not that interested in Faka puffers. They're a little too aggressive for my taste. Lots of my employees have. We've sold tons of them. I've kept them in the store, but as a personal pet, I haven't really kept one. So, and sometimes you get things that, um, they stay in the store for 6, 8 months, and they're kind of like a pet. But in terms of, years and years and years, no, I haven't done that yet. Where'd I get that fireplace? I got that little one on Amazon. It's made by Duraflame. Oh, why can I not? There we go, Duraflame. And right now it's not putting out heat, just adding the ambiance. I was at a local farmer's market in my Aquarium Co-op with my Aquarium Co-op tote bag, and I heard someone yell "Aquarium Co-op" extra loud and embarrassing. Yeah, you got a taste of what it's like for me to go out in public half the time. And how many did I meet? I think we gave out 3 or 4 coins. I don't think I have any up here, do I? Oh, I do. Of the Wildcat coins while on vacation, and met a couple other people. Some were just like briefly in passing because they were working and that kind of stuff. And but no, it's good times, and I would recommend it to everybody. Oh, what was the other one? I would show it to you, but it probably gives away someone's number. One of my friends just got on a cruise in Miami, and there was someone wearing an Aquarium Co-op hat, and so they geeked out because my friend was like, I know that guy. My friend's kind of just real low key Aquarius, like just has one for his kids or whatever. And so I made a little picture and sent it back to him while he was on a cruise. So that probably made that guy's day, or I hope it did, because I went through the effort. An Aquarium Co-op plastic bin to carry up more products to fill those shelves. Yeah, I just moved this thing yesterday because it's a new camera that I had to wait for because it was back ordered, and it came in while I was on vacation. So I'm still kind of setting it up and playing with it a bit, and playing with lighting. Like, oh, do we like that dramatic one better, or do we like this better? I kind of like this better, but oh, what if we turn that one? That looks like that. Like that's kind of both worlds. Don't know. So still lots of stuff to play with. How's the store expansion going? Do you have a plan on having a local in-person event to celebrate it? I don't know. I literally haven't been to my own store expansion in probably 2 months. Life's just been busy, and some things kind of kept lining up where it didn't make sense. Like Joel, who's building it, wouldn't be there that day, and then the day I'd be down there working and doing stuff. So not really sure where the timeline is, but will there be an event? Don't know that answer either. On one hand, it's like, yeah, let's do that. On the other hand, events are kind of just a huge time sink and money sink. So we've been spending kind of a lot of time thinking about how do we want to do events and make them not be so disruptive to just even our own lives. Because I've gotten just so big in what we do. It's like, well, why are we investing $30,000 to put on an event, and it takes weeks and weeks and weeks of planning, and then there's aftermath to deal with, and there's the problem when you get big groups of people together. There's always problems. There's always someone's making me angry. Someone did this. Someone did that. I'm angry that the pizza wasn't the kind I liked, and this and that. So we're trying to figure out how do we make this so that it's a fun event for everybody, including us and staff and things, not just a reason to show up, because we don't do discounts and that kind of stuff. And so usually that's where businesses they struggle through things, because they're like, well, we're going to make so much money that it's worth it not being fun. And since we don't do that part, we try to just have fun. All right. What would cause an aquarium co-op test strips to test positive for ammonia in an established tank? Well, the obvious one, because I don't want to gloss over that, would be ammonia. And that's why we highly recommend people own ammonia strips, is probably twice a year. Well-established aquariums in my care will have some ammonia. Why, Corey? Why? Maybe something died. Maybe the power went out. Maybe we did too big of a trim. Maybe we changed too much stuff. It just happens. And so that's why I like having ammonia strips. So that would be the first one I would highlight and be like, well, let's make sure there's actually not ammonia, because that does happen. And then there could be, a false positive from some mix of chemicals. Like one of the well-known ones is CChem Prime and API test kits. They don't play well together. As far as I know, ours aren't having that problem, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't. With CChem Prime and API liquid test kits, they've been around for so long that common knowledge has kind of come together and we know these things. Whereas we might not know that, and I don't know this, but we might not know that, Easy Green plus random dechlorinator plus this medication signals ammonia on a test strip, for instance, right? We just don't know that yet because you don't have millions, well, not millions of people, but you don't have, I guess it would be millions of dosings of, CChem and test kits and things like that going on over years. So that's right. That's right. I'm wearing sweatpants, Costco sweatpants, getting me through my life. 20 donated gift memberships from Hawk's Nest. Thank you very much. Spreading that Christmas cheer over the holiday. Don't want to presume that you celebrate Christmas, but it's hard not to when we celebrate Christmas, so my brain defaults. What are the easiest fish to breed in an aquarium as a hobbyist? I think live bears are very easy to breed, but not necessarily easy to keep for some people. If I was going to really try and set up someone to breed some fish, I probably would give them white clouds and just only let them have white clouds in their aquarium. And that's usually a pretty easy one, and it's very rewarding because then you get to say, oh, I bred an egg scatter, and they're very easy. Whereas when you're new to the hobby and maybe you're super jazzed on it, and you go into a store or something like that, and you tell people like, oh, I bred guppies, and they're like, yeah, they'll breed in the bag before you can get home, buddy. Where when you breed something like, white clouds, I go, oh, wow, nice, yeah. So I think I usually try to set people up with that. And they're cheap, they're super cheap, and I love that fish. So am I going to do anything nice on Christmas Day? I'm going to live stream for a while. And then I think I go over to my grandma's house. So we'll figure out the timeline on how that day plays out, and then I'll live stream accordingly. It'll still be at noon. But, maybe we have to cut it short, or maybe we can run a little long. Depends on what our schedule is that day. How do I dial in CO2 if you don't use a drop checker? And I have low KH and high GH. Is this ideal for plant growth? So I basically don't deal in the ideals because it's a never-ending tweaking. So like, is it ideal to keep this plant in this parameter? Even if you got that to yes, you'd be like, great, you've made it worse for every other plant. Because we're putting plants that come from all around the world into an aquarium. And then of that, 90% of all aquarium plants would prefer to be out of the water, not in the water. So I don't really play in the ideal. So I would say, yeah, back off that part. But in terms of how to dial in CO2, there's my advice is don't. Again, like CO2 for some reason, the internet props it up as this like magical thing. And it's just a very basic resource. It's CO2. Like everything in the world kind of makes it or uses it. The only goal an aquarium has is to not run out. So if we think of CO2 like we do for gas for our car doesn't go faster. It doesn't save gas or anything like that if we have a full tank versus half a tank or a quarter tank. The only thing our car cares about is not running out. And that's exactly what your aquarium and your aquarium plants care about. They don't care how much is in there. They just want to make sure they don't run out when they need it. And so, well, how do I do that, Corey? Your aquarium water already has some, right? You've already got some just in our water in general and in our air, there's CO2. So we already start with some. We just want to make sure we don't run out. And so just like we're kind of monitoring nutrient stuff, we watch our plants. How are they doing? How fast are they growing? Do they look like they have any deficiencies? And the sign that I use when I'm injecting CO2, I watch for pearling. Now, I just want to, hopefully, I want to see it pearl by the end of the day. And what does pearling mean? It means it's releasing oxygen. So that means, in a super nerdy way, your aquarium also has oxygen in it. Pearling, if we're going to go back to the car analogy, would be like filling up your gas tank and then watching it overflow. If gas was coming out onto the ground, you've got more than the tank can hold, and it has to go somewhere. In your aquarium, that's what happens with oxygen during the day, and you have plants if you have a lot of CO2 going on, or a lot of happy plants going on. So there's so much oxygen there that the tank can't hold anymore, and so you see the bubbles rising at the top and popping at the top. That's what they do. That sign means that your plants aren't running out of anything. They're making so much oxygen during the day that they have all the nutrients they want, and that's a good sign. And hopefully I see that by the end of the day, I go, yep, my plants grew really well all day long, and they enjoyed it. What we typically will find, like maybe you watched the tank from yesterday, maybe I want to film that tank in the morning, and so I want it pearling all day long, or I want it to be impressive in the store. We're really going to crank that CO2 up and really crank that fertilizer up and the lights up, so it starts doing that at 10 a.m. as opposed to 5 p.m., closer to close. But the reality is the plants don't really care. They just don't want to run out. That's all it cares about. Don't let the gas tank run out. Don't let that CO2 gas tank in that aquarium run out. That's all it cares about. So I don't use a drop checker. I don't need really a gauge to say, well, how full is it? Because we have that down low. We can see, oh, we're not going to run out. That's how I do it. And, there's a lot of people that focus on perfect, and nature is kind of never perfect. And so that's kind of when, someone who has a very analytical brain like myself tries to do art. Art is a different part of the brain, and nature is kind of that different part of the brain. So measuring it to a T doesn't really work that well, just like measuring to a T when it comes to food and water parameters and things doesn't work as well as nature works. And I know a lot of scientists, people are just losing their minds, but the reality is when it comes to feeding and stuff like that, a varied diet out in the wild is healthier typically than the best food we can feed, because we're not going, well, yeah, they should eat one ladybug once every 6 years. Well, they should have this source. They should have this. They should have that. Instead, we try to cover everything in this perfect compound, and it will do really well. But still kind of, you can do better in nature because well, yes, it should have a cheetah fall into the water and decay and rot and add those nutrients and let it eat the rotting flesh. Once a year is about right, is what that thing wants. Does Easy Green increase nitrates? Yes. What's the level of nitrates that are ideal for a planted tank? So nitrates are the exact same in that they just don't want to run out. And so, this question might be better asked, how much gas should I buy to get me through the week? And then it's like, well, how much driving are you doing? Do you drive 100 miles to work back and forth every day? Do you just run and get the groceries once a week? And that would be how many plants you have, right? I've got tons of plants and lots of light. Well, you're going to need a lot of nitrates in there. And so what we find for the average hobbyist is keeping your nitrates at about 40 parts per million. Somewhere between 20 and 40. So, you're like, oh yeah, I put 20 bucks in. That'll give me X amount of gas this week, right? And if I run out, I can go get more. Oh, I've got 40, but I also wouldn't tell you like, well, go invest in $20,000 in gas. Like, well, that's not the answer too. It'll go stale and things will happen that you don't want. So 20 to 40 parts per million is where I like to run most of my tanks. Now, if it's at 50 parts per million, do I run out and water change instantly? No, I might go, well, bought a little extra gas. I'll work through it this week. It'll be fine. But if I was sitting at 100 parts per million, like, okay, yeah, I should do a water change here and figure out where did I go wrong in my thought process to get my aquarium to here. And that's really what it comes down to, is thinking about how did I get here? All right. Can you give me a live review or feedback on the Facebook page I solely run for the fish store I manage? I don't think I have it really set up to do that. But I would probably just eviscerate you. I actually just made a whole video on social media that local fish stores should be, my opinion, working towards, and myself included. Like if I reviewed my own thing, I would eviscerate myself, because what is achievable and what is done by like every company is usually so far off, but it's always a compromise of how much time, were you getting ready for Christmas sales or whatever, and stuff like that. And I've got another gentleman that I haven't responded to, but he wants to pay me because he wants to open up a store, $500 for 15 minutes of my time. And I don't want to do that because I feel bad about taking the money. But then also every time I've ever given in, it becomes more than 15 minutes. And like just one more question, one more email, one more thing. And so it's I'm going to talk to my team and go, is there a way we could set up where we could help some of these individuals without over leveraging my time, not making us look bad, and then also doing something meaningful? And then, it'd be like the same thing of if I turn on super chats, over time, no one wants to watch anymore because it's the person that paid the most money, got the question asked, I have to answer it, and it leads to, oh yeah, it's talking about pea puffers again. But at Lloyd Aquatics, let me see if I can pull you up on Facebook and maybe I'll take a look at some point. It's not popping up for me so far. I'll have to look a little later. Bob did a stream recently where he's buying 3 types of Corridoras to breed. So my question is, what is my favorite type of Corridora? I like Corridoras hastatus quite a bit. They're little they're not a pygmy Cory, but they are a dwarf Cory type, and they like to school midwater, so that's fun. Can brine shrimp live off green water? You can have brine shrimp live off green water. The problem I find is that you run out of green water. They're so good at eating it, and they scrub the water clean. You have to have multiple sources of green water going, usually, to not have the culture kind of crash. Aquariumcoop business channel? Yeah. The problem is we have that already, and I don't have time for that. There's definitely lots of fun, but I just don't have time. Like before I went on vacation, I bought like 30 books that I want to read. So I'm trying to make changes in my life to accomplish some of the things I want. So there was like, I've got a giant stack of books I want to read through that relate to business and things like that. And if I don't make time for those things, that's a problem for me. So trying to restructure some things. Do I have any experience with orange Venezuelan and black Venezuelan Corays? Yes. There are very few fish that are planted community tank type fish that I don't have experience with after 20 years of fish keeping. I've bred the black ones. They look very nice when they're young. As they grow up, they turn to more of a dark brown color. We used to breed them for profit because they sold for so much money. They were all the rage probably 12 years ago. And yeah, so trends come and go all the time. And good looking fish, and they're fun. But there's a lot of other corridors that I think are cheaper and look amazing and have great personalities also that a bunch of people enjoy. Let's see. Is there anything apple snails won't eat? They've destroyed everything, including Anubias. If they're the true apple snail, that's why they're illegal in most states, is they're problematic. Oh, I did see your comment. Maidenhead Aquatics in Blackpool. Must be a UK store? That's my guess. Maidenhead Aquatics at Blackpool. All right. Is it a group or is it an actual Facebook page? Like a business page. Anyway. Do you recommend brine shrimp in a Tupperware for pea puffer feeding? Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. Seems like a lot of extra work. My brain's already analyzing, like, are you putting the pea puffer in there? Are you trying to contain them in the tank, in the container? And my thoughts just kind of go like, why not just feed frozen? Do I still work with Aquahuna? Yes. I've recently ordered from them, and all my chili rasboras died from ick. I would say email them, and they'll either make it right or they'll diagnose where it went wrong and maybe tell you no. But it's why we don't sell fish on the internet. They're one of the most difficult things to have a beneficial relationship between the buyer and the seller. And we run this in the retail store too. And it's just very difficult because when something that's alive dies, people usually get pretty angry. And then oftentimes people aren't logical. And so the example that I would give here, and I have no idea because I don't know any of these details, so anyone could be right or wrong in this scenario. But imagine I have 1,000 chili rasboras in a tank in my studio right now. And you come over and you buy 20 of them. And I go, great, thanks for the $60 or whatever it is. And then 2 days later you say, they all died from ick. And I go, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And then I look this way and I go, I haven't lost a single one. Customer says, you've sold me terrible fish. You're a horrible person. How dare you? And then I go, yeah, but I still have 980 of these things thriving. And then they go, well, it must have been something you've done. And then I'm thinking it must have been something you've done. And so as a business, if I want to continue in business, I basically have to eat it and go, okay, well, let's try it again. And that's why fish get marked up so much, because in general, people take care of pets differently. There's things that can go wrong. Everyone can do everything right, and things still go wrong, right? It could be like, oh yeah, we've got all these chili rasboras. You bought some. Oh, you didn't tell me you were keeping them with diamond tetras and they were going to harass the crap out of them. They never get to eat and they're going to get sick and die. Well, that's a problem. But in general, yeah, we do work with Aquahuna. If you use the Aquariumcoop code, you get 5% off. And usually they take care of people. That's all the reviews that I see time and time again is when something does go wrong, they make it right. They have a fairly liberal like death policy. I want to say it's like 48 hours or 72 hours, something crazy that, so it makes it easy to recommend them. And plus we still buy fish from them every single week. And I think people forget also that a live good is different than buying this Diet Coke or a product. I can't guarantee that a live product is always the same. And so, Like when we order from wholesalers, we accept about 10% of loss is the cost of doing business. And that's what gets us to have a really good relationship with our wholesalers. Because there are businesses that will be like, I ordered 900 neon tetras and 4 were dead. I demand a refund. And, the wholesalers probably rolling their eyes going, okay, here's your $2. Like you realize you lost more time and money making the claim than you did from just like being with a customer and selling more neon tetras. Um, because there's things that go wrong. One got damaged in a net, maybe one didn't do so well in transit, maybe one got pinched in a corner. But anything less than about 10%, we don't, it's not that we want to see anything die. So let's be clear about that. But we don't hold the shipper responsible. Now, there are examples you'd be like, Corey, remember that one time we told a story about a stingray on how they shipped it and it died in transit and all of that? Well, it's hard to do 10% of one fish, right? And there is some differences that
Once there were two mice who became friends at Mouse College. One was from the city, the other from the country. When they graduated, they promised they would stay friends and visit each other. Soon Country Mouse visited the city, but right away, he got chased by a cat and nearly run over by a taxi. He couldn't even eat lunch as the pigeons grabbed all the lovely rotten food on the ground. He decided to turn back. I can't visit you. How can you live there? Country Mouse wrote in a somewhat regrettably snippy email. But City Mouse understood.
I don't know why Siri decided to tell a story. Don't do it again. But that is one way to get sidetracked. 10%, that's way higher than for products. Why? I just explained that, William. Live fish. Live fish. My wife is laughing so loud it's distracting. Uh, you can't control live beings, right? So imagine I make a robot that vacuums, right? And I set the program and I make 100 of those in 100 buildings and they work and they never have a problem. And then I hire 100 humans. And then they're supposed to vacuum every day for 8 hours. There's going to be, oh, they got sick. Oh, they had stuff come up. They didn't show up for work. Like, once you add a live element to something, it always goes up in things go wrong factor. So that's why it would be higher than a dry good default thing. It's also why we won't even do it because we don't want to do anything that's higher than a 5% problem rate. All right. Does the city move to the City Mouse move to the country? We'll have to. I scrolled through and it was a really long story. Otherwise, I was gonna let it finish, but it was gonna be like 20 minutes, and yeah, that would be the first and last time my watch interrupted me. Oh, it will be somehow. Like I never allow Siri and that kind of stuff on there, but it updated and apparently turned it back on, so it'll be going off forever. I just wanted it because I want to keep track of heart rates and things like that. So I'm trying to be better about wearing this watch to collect some data to make sure I'm not just going to die of a heart attack tomorrow. Okay. When you research online, you'll see some people say you can never keep this fish over 5 parts per million nitrate. So it's not true. Autosynchronous is my example. Yeah. Basically, if you're reading something on the internet, just assume that it's come from someone who's crazy that has an agenda that that's just the way the internet works at this point. What's unfortunate, honestly, is the AI technology to write like blog articles and stuff has gotten so good. Very soon you're going to see most articles online that haven't even been read or reviewed by a human. And they're getting really good. They can tell quite the narrative that makes sense, but they're adding nothing of substantial value. They're just recycling things. And so, it's going to grab a piece of knowledge like that, like, oh, autoseagulls can't live in 5 parts per million or more. And apply no logic or research to it. My counter to that, and this is why I try to not fight the internet because it's a losing battle forever, is that someone makes that statement and you don't know, are they the world's best researcher on autosynclists, or they kept two autosynclists and that's their entire fish keeping career, and they're just listing off what they read on Wikipedia. Where I come in and I go, well, from my experience, viewing them and catching them in the wild, seeing them kept at the wholesalers that I've shown you guys, where there's hundreds and hundreds of them kept in these little like wooden trays where there's barely changing water and things like that, that would seem counterintuitive to the 5 part per million limit. And in my personal keeping, I definitely have kept them way more. And in fact, all of my tanks that have autosynclists usually live between 20 and 40 parts per million because I'm dosing easy green. But I'm just another guy on the internet, so don't listen to me. Like that's the problem, is I'm no more qualified than anybody else. The internet, it can be used as a guide of like, oh, do I trust what they're saying? I don't know, that seems good or bad. And then move on from there. And this is why I really recommend that you experience nature and find it out for yourself, because that's all anyone's ever done. There's no official guide to autosynclists or anything. It's all hobbyists going, hey, I found it worked best when I did this thing. Will expired brine shrimp eggs still hatch? Most likely. Usually the hatch rate goes down a bit. I don't think that I have any good rule of thumb for you, but imagine that every 6 months the hatch rate goes down by 5%, let's say. So if you had 90% eggs, 6 months later you're at 85, and then a year later after that, you're at, I can't even do math, 15% from 90 is 65, right? No. 75. Why is my brain not? Yeah, 75. I'm trying to analyze this camera and grab these questions and talk at the same time. It's not working out so hot. Are Romano shrimp okay in 20 parts per million? Yes. Are shrimp okay in like 3,000 parts per million? Probably. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen a shrimp do poorly in high nitrates. I've had tanks that are crazy high, easily in the hundreds, because I'm breeding like plecos and stuff. So I personally, in my care, haven't seen huge detriments. Now, that's not every type of shrimp. That's not every scenario. Just because high nitrates doesn't mean something else wasn't building up or is building up. And so there's going to be lots of variables to that. But in my experience, shrimp are pretty much the lowest tier on the planet, and they endure almost anything. That's why that's why when you're shipping huge amounts of them, 8,000 of them in a box, you put them in the fridge to cool them down before you ship them to slow their metabolism down. People are real worried, like, are they gonna make it in 68 degrees? Like, well, they're living outside with ice on the water, so probably. Is a 90-gallon tank good for betta fish and some tetras? Maybe. It all depends on how you set it up. No fish tanks on the background? Nope. It's a weird hobby. It's like learn the basics and try and learn something from everything else that goes wrong. Yeah, that's really, there's not enough paid studies going on, and even those, there's not enough of them to really, mean anything. When you have one study done, you get all the bias of that person. And so the problem becomes, we don't learn everything. We could learn about something that way. We need 100 independent studies on one fish and all these scenarios. And then, we know this one fish. That's why we know a lot about the fathead minnow that no one would keep in an aquarium. But, or we know a lot about salmon and other food fishes because there's money there. But we don't know. Honestly, we know almost nothing about aquarium fish. That's the reality. Was there any fish in the Instagram story Chris posted of you in the European waterway? Yeah, there is. I don't know what they were. They were these big, almost like trout looking fish. What's the snow report? I don't know. I tried opening these when I was setting up yesterday, and it just geeked out the camera, didn't look good, and all of that. So don't know what the snow report is. Will I ever put a display tank in this room? Nope. It's on the second level of the house, and there's no water up here. And I tried one on the desk right over here actually, and it was just such a pain because water changes and everything. I was like, this is so basically I realized I'm like, this is to please other people and not me. I don't need to do this. I don't need to keep an aquarium to please someone that's not me. So I said, nope, not doing it. What do I think of the Aquadom Aquarium in Berlin, Germany? I don't really have an opinion. Well, the opinions I have, no one wants to hear, and that is, I didn't go there, so I have no attachment to it. Does it suck that an aquarium exploded and fish died? Sure. Happens fairly often, probably every day, actually. Not of that size, but all around the world, in people's homes and things. My opinion actually would be that I find it irritating that not social media, news media in general has just become a parrot, in that something happens, every news outlet goes, hey, we need to write a story about the thing that happened. And so, like in my feed over the last couple of days, I've probably seen it 170 times between promoted Facebook stuff, between every influencer I know going, I better share and get the clicks and the likes from that thing. And so it basically boils me down to like, I'm never going to share or talk about the stuff if I can help it because it's so oversaturated. Anyone that wanted to know about it knows about it. And that's how I know when my mom and my grandma and everybody I know goes, hey, did you see the thing about the thing? Yes, I've seen the thing about a thing. Like, if you, as someone who's not really into fish, saw it, someone who's into fish has seen it 180 times. And so, yeah, sucks. Never got to see it myself. And yeah, that's my opinion on that. Do I like a circular aquarium? No, they don't really display fish very well. They're fun in the fact that, ooh, I don't own one of those yet. That might be fun. But in the, I now own it and going, oh, it just changes the way you look at fish, and it's not very great. Yes, buy gift cards. If you haven't bought all of our gift cards yet, buy them. Oh, I do remember someone earlier asked if they were physical or digital. They are digital. We have no way to physically do a gift card. And I don't think physical gift cards need to exist. I'm kind of against them. But I'm not saying we'll never do it, but there's a few hurdles to jump over. And in general, an email for me works fine. And like, if this was the gift card, and now we have to like ship it around the world or around the country, you get it, and then you just punch it in online. It's not as good for the environment. You have the extra plastic, all of that. And I realize there's a million different ways in our business that we're probably doing stuff incorrectly, but I don't want to necessarily spend more time to try and do more of that. I'd rather try and do less of it. Any thoughts on making time to get into the fish room? I found myself struggling to work up the energy to get down there and do work. Yeah, I mean, it's a struggle that I've had for years and over the years, different times, and I've met a lot of people, even Dean, that have had that. And really, it's, if you're enjoying it, you'll go do it. So it sounds like you're probably not enjoying it. And the longer you don't find a way to fix it, the longer you won't do it. Maybe you need new fish. Maybe you need to get rid of some fish. Maybe you need it to be, one of my pieces of advice I give is put an aquarium where you're going to see it, not where you have to go see it. And so a lot of people, they start that way and they love the hobby and they go, ooh, it'd be great if I had a whole room full of aquariums. And then, you maybe you're like me and it's in a different building now. It takes work to go out there. Whereas if it's right next to your kitchen or right next to your bed or right next to your living room, you're going to see it all the time. You might go, oh yeah, today I'm meaning to do that. Oh yeah, I said I was going to do that yesterday. I'll do it today. So making the time, it's like anything else. Usually it's not time. we all have the same 24 hours in a day. We all have different commitments, but when we really analyze time, and this is what I always find for myself, I'm self-critical, people in my family, influencers, business people we work with, everyone has the time because we all have the same amount of time. It's whether you're making it a priority. So if you read the statement back and you go, well, how do I make my aquariums a priority in my life? That's when I would tell you, I don't know. How are you going to make it a priority in your life? Do you care about it? Are you interested in it? What's preventing you? Oh, I don't like going down the stairs. Or, oh, I don't, like for me, I don't like not being around my dogs and my wife and that kind of stuff because I work so much. And then when I go and I work out in the studio, I'm removed. But I need a quiet space to film and do things like that. So one of the reasons why Corey, why do you have a studio and an office in your home upstairs when it used to be out in the studio? So I could spend more time with my family and be more connected. And, when I need to go to the restroom or I need to go do something, I then go talk with my wife and pet the dogs and that kind of stuff. Where out in the studio, I have a bathroom. There's even a shower and that kind of stuff. I technically don't even need to come in, but I lose all those interactions. So, kind of that Wednesday video, if you'd seen it and watched it, about, having that chance to run into people and get, get that exposure. Let's see here. How do I like making the recent videos of me in the fish room? They're enjoyable, but I know so the problem, the thing I know is they're fun to make for a while, then they're not as stimulating for me, and then also I know they don't do as well on YouTube. But that's with everything, and nothing. If I make you the world's best cookies every day of your life, you're tired of those cookies. Doesn't mean that if I haven't had them in 2 years, like, oh, that sounds great, I would love those, right? You'll have them for a while and you get bored of them. So there's a lot of, what I know, I'm dedicating basically this entire next year to working on my own fish room so that I enjoy it and I'm proud of it. I haven't been proud of it in probably 2 or 3 years since the move and all of that. So like the year getting ready to move, it's like, well, I don't want to build that because then I know we're moving. Then we had to move and remodel, and that was like a year. And then setting up stuff, that was like another year. And it's, there are people that have been part of the channel for years that have never seen anything of substance that I've done. And that's not a great look for us. And it's not a great look that I enjoy either. So, being that I'm not in the store anymore or anything like that, I don't even get to have display tanks there where people are like, wow, how'd you do that? I don't even do enough store tours to be like, hey, look how Murphy's tanks turned out. Look what this is going on. And so I want to have my own tanks that I enjoy and I'm proud of to show you guys. And so that's what I'm working on. So I've turned down 2 trips to Peru. I've turned down events. I'm turning down lots of stuff. And people just keep offering more money and more perks. And I go, no, none of that is going to get me to what I want in my fish room. And without that, I start losing the hobby. If I don't get to enjoy the hobby, I'm not a hobbyist anymore. So that's more important than business, and we keep turning stuff down. So that's my goal this year, is just keep working in my own fish room at the cost of anything, pretty much. How am I doing? How's recovery from the sickness, and how am I feeling these days? Feeling pretty good. Um, yeah. It's mostly just business and people and that kind of stuff is the stressors. It's lots of fun things about the business, but there's all the stress with running like a $10 million company that, um, yeah, it just, there's always stuff where it's like, ugh. And it could be lawyer stuff, could be human resource stuff, could be lights being delayed, could be, there's just a bunch of stuff. And so, but working over time, I've been lessening loads and we're making improvements here and there to make things easier. So I'd say overall, things getting better every day. Does Candy ever take a day off? Yep, she gets days off. She always responds to my emails and gives the best customer service. Yeah, we have a team of customer service people. We've been working on assets. We've been focused on customer service for many years, and so it's kind of a well-oiled machine, which is nice to have. Yeah, for a while there was kind of no days off. It was 7 days a week for a few years, but Candy was able to handle it and she wanted to handle it that way, and that's good. And now we're making sure that we have redundancy and things like that. So, we learn over time and we try to improve. That's probably part of my own stress is even though people say we have great customer service, I probably have 10 things that we're going to change and implement. And, just because people say we're good doesn't mean we can't get better. And, like an athlete, just because maybe you won your championship that year, that doesn't mean like, well, I'll never try to get better. It means like, no, you want to make sure you stay on top and you try to keep doing better and getting better to make sure you can repeat that. Will I ever be getting any tanks with under gravel filters again? Yeah, maybe. I almost set up this last one you saw yesterday with an under gravel, but I chose, I think I went on Amazon. I was like, I can't find the right one. Moving on, setting up my own thing. When are you going to tour Dean's fish room? I don't know. Dean's been super busy, and so have I. And he's working on his beach house and all of that. I'm hoping we do it in the next month or so because I think we only went to his fish room once this year. But that's what happens when you have a beach house. It's super fun, and you're not remodeling, but working on things. Can I put in a piece of ground with a female betta? It's a 29-gallon Planet tank. The easiest answer for me is to say no, because if I say no and you don't do it, it can't die. If you do it and it dies, I'm a horrible person. Could I do it? Sure. Could it also blow up in my face the next day? Definitely. So I don't think there's a safe answer there. Anyone that says like something's for sure, I don't think they're being truthful with you. A lot would go into how is the tank set up? How are you feeding? What are the personalities of each fish? Are you watching it enough? But I'm kind of the opinion that any two fish could be put together with enough trying. Does that make sense? Probably not. For a lot of people, like, why go with something that's so difficult when we could make it so easy? If there are hundreds of sensors on a car to monitor every aspect, why doesn't that technology exist for testing water parameters in fish tanks constantly? Because your aquarium doesn't cost $35,000. That's the main reason, really. It's there's a few other little technicalities, but on average, our hobby doesn't spend any money in comparison to cars and other things that exist. And every day, even when I do videos on like the cheap, people are like, well, how do you do it cheaper? And at a certain point, things don't get cheaper. The hobby already you can do for essentially free. Like go get a bucket that you find on the side of the road, go grab some water out of a pond, and then borrow someone's net and catch some wild fish. You're now an aquarist. But in general, what people want is, well, how do I do the things that cost thousands of dollars for nothing? And it's like, well, that's, short of, finding it for free or doing something like that, it's not repeatable. And people get angry when you do that. Well, I can't find that 180-gallon tank on Craigslist. That's not fair. That didn't really help anybody. Okay, well, that's why I don't do videos like that anymore. So I tend to stick with stuff that's repeatable but costs money. And yeah. Will there be a tour of the expansion store when it's done? Yeah, probably. I would imagine so. Not sure when it's done. It's done when it's done. Basically, the TLDR of that is Joel, who works for us, has been building it, and we wanted to have it done in a few months. Then we tripled the size of it, and then so we had to like tear down a bunch of work we did, redo it. There's been delays on different parts while building it. And then his significant other was diagnosed with cancer. And so there's been some time off for some appointments. And just in general, I think, when something like that happens in your family, you're not working at your best. Like you're not laying there in bed going, okay, how do I get that right angle turn around the rack at the expansion store? Instead, you're worried about your significant other and your family and that kind of stuff. And so I don't want to put any extra stress and be like, there's a deadline when this thing has to be done. Instead, focus on your family getting healthy. You know, yes, he's still showing up to work and doing a great job and everything. I just don't want to add extra work stress on top of family stress to get an expansion for a store done that will be very nice for everybody, but is not as important as someone's family. So we'll take it when it gets done, and I think it'll be done in a reasonable amount of time, and we'll all get to enjoy it and everything. And I want a good job being done. And a lot of times, if you take longer, you have better ideas and you have time to think through things instead of got to make a deadline and get things done. My friend gets alerts on his phone if there's certain parameters are wrong with his reef tank. Just have to be able to spend $1,000 on that. Yeah, I mean, there's Apex systems, and you have to recalibrate probes and all of that. And my thing I would say is, do we even need that? I don't think we do. I think you lose a lot when you go fully automated on everything. G-Bear. Fireplace arrives on Wednesday. I'm supposed to get prizes from the live stream, not from the wife. It's a good little unit, actually. I much prefer that as opposed to like an oil heater and stuff, because it does look cool, and I like a fireplace. What can I say? I'm waiting to cycle a tank and the Aquariumcoop LED light to finish my 40 breeder. Yeah, as far as I know, the last email update said, I think the container arrives at the port like on the 28th. So that'd be like 10 days from now. And then, there's holidays, right? So I don't know if the truckers and the port people and all that are working on New Year's Day and that kind of stuff. So right now we tentatively we're hoping for like a January 6th would be like, hey, the light is in stock and people can order it. That being said, it could slide either way by days or a week or something like that. And unfortunately, that part of the way business life works, there's weather and there's all these things that have these little like put in little delays or speed things up. And it's a part of production is like, here's a window of like 6 weeks. You're going to get that product somewhere in there. And then you just kind of go, okay, yeah. That's where, most businesses do pre-orders and all of that. We don't like to do that because it jams up customer service. I wouldn't have bought one if I knew it was going to take 6 weeks and a day. How dare you? And so we just go, hey, it's here when it's here. Builds up excitement, and we don't want to take your money before we have something to sell you. 5 gifted memberships from Nate Newton. Naughton? I think it's Naughton. Thank you. All right. I'm late, but I'm glad to be here. Reef equipment isn't ever fully automated. It constantly needs to be checked. It helps you to keep things more stable. Some corals crash when anything swings. I don't know. I mean, I've seen some pretty fully automated systems. Like, I know for like $1,700 or something, you can buy a fully automated liquid test kit system that uses syringes, and each vial shakes itself the right amount of times. But I get what you're saying. The average hobbyist you're going to see at home, yes, it's not fully automated. But then there's people where you meet where you're like, oh, you're a billionaire, and oh, your aquarium, you spent $1.8 million on it. It's essentially fully automated. They've got, like I know the guy that builds my large aquariums, right? He's got systems where it's like you press a button, the canopy opens, the light moves, or he's got systems for the lights where they'll move based on the time of day. Like, if money is no object, there's a gadget out there that will do it. And, you can get to a point where you're, instead of, I guess maybe the premise I'm trying to demonstrate here, you can go from watching an aquarium and observing and trying to make tweaks and enjoying it, to watching spreadsheets and, tracking alkalinity and pH and everything, the swings based on lighting and time of day and all of that, and analyzing spreadsheets. So, given the choice, I can interact with my aquarium in nature, or I can interact with Excel spreadsheets and alerts and triggers all day long from apps. I will choose to observe an aquarium because that's why I got into it, to observe it. Have I tried legit fish food? I have. I've tried it several times, really. And my honest feedback, even though that Mike is a friend of mine, I believe that it is too expensive for the food it is. Now, before I finish that statement, I also believe Extreme is too expensive for the food it is. Sorry, the voice is going. It's not that they're not good foods, because they're both great foods, and the ingredients in legit fish food are great, so is Extreme and that kind of stuff. It is personally too expensive for me to feed out. Now, it might make perfect sense if you have 1 to 3 aquariums, or some smaller amount of aquariums or smaller things. But for me to feed out like a legit every day, it would probably cost me $20 in food a day. Same Extreme is similar, but being that they oftentimes will sponsor and send me foods, it is cheaper. That being said, if I had one aquarium, I definitely would be choosing legit fish food or Extreme or some very high-end food, because it's like my dogs. I've got 2 small dogs, and the difference between me feeding crap or really good food is like $2 a day. And so the difference between those two, I'm going, okay, so like $60 a month, I can feed really, really high quality treats and food and all of that, or I can feed really low quality stuff and save $60. And where we're at, that's a worthy investment for our pets. Now, if I had 100 dogs, or I was, let's say I was a rescue and I had 100 dogs, or I was a shelter, I can't afford to feed that premium quality at all the time. Or even if my 2 dogs that right now weigh like 7 pounds and 14 pounds, if they weighed 80 pounds and 100 pounds, and the difference is now $500 a month, that's a much different analysis, even the same food, right? And so I think that's where legit fish food and Extreme and that kind of stuff, limited amounts of tanks makes sense, where the more you scale it up, the less I think it makes sense. Glad to hear it, Randy. Randy says, just want to tell you, I look forward to your live chat, especially on Sundays while driving. I'm glad you enjoy it. Some people love Excel spreadsheets, but I'm with Corey. Don't get me wrong. I spend a lot of time in Excel, and I guess I'm at a point in my life where there's so many alerts and technology and data and everything from everything. I'm trying to pare down. That was one of the reasons why we didn't develop an app for our light, because I don't want just another one. So imagine, even if you're like me, you're like, oh, I've got the Fluval app, I've got the Casa Wi-Fi timer, I've got another app for another type of light in my fish room. Oh, I bought a Kessel light, I've got an app for that. Oh, I've got an Apex system, I got a different app for that. I bought this, I bought that, I bought this. I don't want to have, on my phone a whole page dedicated to aquarium apps. I've got apps, like for me, I'm kind of a, crazy user case where it's like, oh, we've got dosers in the warehouse that have apps. We have ones at the store. We have camera systems for here, camera systems for the warehouse, camera systems for retail. Like, I've got a billion things that we're monitoring all the time. And the last thing I want is another one. And even my wife and other people, the app, everything, it's funny, like everything is better with an app, but not everything has a good app. And so I study user behavior. I study people. And what I notice for me, when I go to buy something now, so it used to be I'd always go look and read the reviews. Now what I do is I go and read the reviews on the apps. Because too often the product is good, the app is terrible. I've got that experience with my garage door openers. I think we spent between the studio and home like $20,000 on garage doors that are insulated really well and openers and all of that. The app is garbage terrible. And had I known that, I would have picked something completely different because I needed to work. Like, for instance, another example of like what causes stress in your life, Corey? While I was gone, a cargo container landed. The team unloaded it, which is great. But before that, the day before, they found out that one of the motors on the forklift that is here at my house was broken. So they had to have another forklift dropped off to make sure they could unload the cargo container. Now, when that process was done, they had to come and pick up the forklift. Well, we had scheduled it to be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They showed up at 8 a.m. We had house sitters watching the dogs and the fish. They're now calling us going, there's people here to pick up a forklift. And then we had to get different people and management teams involved, and they're all going. We were very clear they had to be at 2 o'clock. Turns out the dispatch person never told the person to pick it up that it had to be at 2 o'clock. So after all that hubbub of like an hour and a half of work, then they finally come back later in the day and pick it up. Then a couple days later, they had to pick up the other forklift that had a broken engine. And so yeah, I don't even know how I got on that tangent, but technology and because I was looking on cameras and stuff. I think that's how I got to that point. All right. I know you said you can cut test strips in half, but do you ever worry about residue on the scissors messing up the accuracy? I never experienced that problem, and we did that probably hundreds of thousands of times in the stores before we actually launched our own. So that's how my life works. Is if I don't run into the problem, I don't worry about it. So yeah, I also don't cut test strips in half now that we print, or you get 200 for so cheap. There's always this like time versus money thing. And when test strips were 25 for the same amount, it made sense to cut them. And when you get 200 for that amount, my time's worth more. Like, go out to lunch or something. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are redhead tapaho earth eaters to destroy plants? They themselves don't actively go and destroy plants typically. They just dig a lot. So if you put a lot of bigger stones kind of around the bases of the plants, they won't be able to dig near it, and your plants should do just fine. What all do you record about your tanks? You write down the parameters? Nope, nothing. But before YouTube, after YouTube, all that? Nope. Write down nothing. Well, I have a pretty good memory, but in general, I don't see. I haven't really seen anyone, because I meet people that are like, look at this, the phone book. Oh, that's just the parameters. I test my tank 16 times a day. I've never seen anyone really be able to derive useful action out of intense logging from even from fish breeders and that kind of stuff. Usually, you'll be logging everything, and you're like, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. And then they'll get something that does work, and then you just remember that. So I don't find that I get a lot of benefit of spending the time to write stuff down when I could just be doing more stuff. Where can we get the co-op CO2 regulators? You can buy it on our website. I don't know about most. A lot of our partner stores would carry it as well. What would I do with 50 parts per million nitrates in the tap water without using RO water? I would just use that water. I almost want everybody just to keep aquariums in a vacuum. Imagine you could never talk to anybody else about an aquarium, and you could never read about it. What would you do? You would try stuff. And then what? You'd figure out what worked. And then what? You'd enjoy it. That's all the hobby is. We've made it much more complicated by going, well, I should probably get the opinion of like 100 people on what I should do. The reality is, if tomorrow I woke up and I had 50 parts per million nitrate in my water, I wouldn't even notice. Probably for a few weeks. And then I'd be like, man, am I getting a lot of algae? Yeah, what's going on? Ooh, a lot of nitrates in all the water. Ooh, what have I done? Then I test the tap water. Oh, it's in my tap water. Oh, God, what am I going to do? And then I would turn down my auto water change system and be like, instead of changing water every day, let's change water like once a week. And then I would wait a month and be like, well, I have less algae, but nitrate's still a little high. Let's make it change water every 10 days. Perfect. Moving on with the rest of my life. That's how I would do it. Yeah. I log things. Now I need to add a wonder shell every 2.5 weeks. I battle very soft water, so it's good for me to track the addition of coral or equilibrium or wonder shells. Sure, if it works for you. I do the same thing without logging. Do we sell red floater plants in the store? I don't think we do. We might have some in stock, but a lot of times we don't have them sitting in stock because most people don't put enough light on them and they end up killing them and then they're sad. Nitrates really aren't that bad. I always have 40 part per million and my fish are colorful. Yeah, the big problem with nitrates is I don't believe nitrates themselves are actually bad for an aquarium. It's how you arrive at the nitrates. So let's say I have 20 clown loaches in a 55-gallon tank and I feed them and I never change water for 5 years and my nitrates are 400 parts per million. That water is probably fairly low quality and not very good for the fish, just from minerals building up and water acidifying and hormones building up and all of that. Now, if I took that same tank and I did 100% water change and the fish were fine and all that, and then I dosed Easy Green to 400 parts per million, I don't believe that to be the same at all. That's a bunch of the chemicals from Easy Green, much different than the acidification process and all of that over the course of years. So I think the problem we have in the hobby, as always, is we're almost never comparing apples to apples. And so, like, when we just say 40 parts per million, one guy's got it from Oscars, the next one's got it in saltwater tank, the next one has it in a Planet tank, the next one has it in a brackish water tank, the next one has it from Easy Green, the next one has it from Seachem, the next one has it from Flake Foods, the next one has it from, right? None of them are the same. And so that is the problem we run into online when you go, hey, I did XYZ, but we didn't qualify it with, anything outside of that. And so we're not really comparing the same things. Are longfin rosy barbs known for jumping out? They can. Definitely can. I mean, any fish can really jump, but I recommend glass tops on everything. I'm the oddball. Let's see here. I'm a teacher and brakes make lighting a problem. Let me think. Got a smart plug and it wanted Wi-Fi and school Wi-Fi is impossible to get onto. After over an hour, I left, was so mad, janitor feeds luckily. Yeah, I mean, that kind of sounds like a problem with just that school and Wi-Fi being closed off or something. But that's not really a problem per app or something, I would say. It's gotta have internet. Our lives revolve around internet now. It's kind of scary. Are there partner stores in Europe yet? Nope, not yet, unfortunately. Any tips on getting hair algae off of Java moss without completely destroying the moss? The only tips that I have that work, having a tank that's got a ton of amano shrimp in it, put Java moss in there, don't feed the amanos, let them feed on it. Not a great solution, but the only one I found that works really well. Java fern banana plants, Echinodorus martyri, Alternanthera renekii, and dwarf Sagittaria with a Blue Ball 3.0 using planted tank setting adjusted to 20% lighting. That's a statement. I don't know if I missed the question somewhere. I don't think I did. I don't know. By the way, I shot a video before I left about PAR and lighting, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. The people that will watch it. There's a lot of people that won't watch it, and then they're just going to be like, oh, I still don't get it. But the people that do watch it, I think it'll help quite a bit. Let's see, first live in a while. I've missed this, just popped in. Was just adding things to my shopping cart. Any ATA on pink flamingos will be back in stock. We had them earlier in the weekend. We usually get some like every week lately. Not a ton, but most things. I think the plants have been like 48 out of 51 varieties have been available like every week lately. Logan says I use an old reliable plug-in timer. $5 at Walmart. Yeah, that's a good, get the ones that, you can basically push down when it needs to be on and lift up when it needs to be off. That'd be a good answer. Have I ever put reef rock or substrate in a freshwater tank with success? Yep, all the time. Works just fine for me. Yes, it'll add some, some pH and some hardness and that kind of stuff, but works fairly well. Did I go to Hawaii? I did, and I'm back. I handed out a coin on the airplane even. You saw that if you were following the Aquariumcoop Facebook group. So more and more of you are following my personal profile, Corey McElroy, so you got to see, like we did glass blowing and the ocean stuff and pictures from the vacation too. So if you want to watch more of my personal life, you can watch my Facebook. And then if you want more than what we do on YouTube, follow Aquariumcoop Facebook page. And then we also have a group where you have to be in the group to see anything though. Have I ever had Malawi shrimp? Alex from Secret History Living in Your Aquarium is breeding them and getting colors out of them. Any advice for anyone raising them? Yep, I've had them. They're a very hardy, adaptive shrimp that never get great, great color, but hardy and easy and cheap. And, they used to be like cockroaches where, like at least at our local club, you'd be like, here's a bag of 70 Malawi shrimp, $12. Here's another bag of shrimp, because they breed very easily and they don't have bright colors like a lot of the other ones. But yeah, fun shrimp to keep if you've never kept them before. But kind of like snowball shrimp, you keep them if you've never kept them before, and then you're like, yeah, I can see why he's never made it big, because I'd rather have this be red, orange, green, blue, yellow, any other color than just the white eggs. But it's still cool to have. Do I know the HS Aqua brand? And what is my opinion on it? Brands like API and Fritz are not available in my country. No, I've never heard of HS Aqua, so no opinion. John Lee says, I feel dumb. Didn't think to look for the regulator under plant supplies, but I guess that makes sense. Sometimes it gets a little difficult when we categorize products, like you could put it under equipment, or you could put it under plant supplies, or you could make a new CO2 category, or we try to keep it, you can always search. That's the good news. And we try to keep the categories fairly narrow though. Did I get to do any snorkeling? We did, yeah. Tested out a new little underwater camera that hopefully I can use in Peru or something someday. I was focusing on taking pictures though, and not so much video. Any chance my light came in yet? Nope. Early in the year. I would say January 6th. It's funny how often people keep asking us the same question, even though I have it red and bold on the thing that says January 6th. And then they will email us and say, when do you think it? In fact, I tested out a feature that said ask a question on the product page. And people said, when will you have it? Even though it's in red, 10 lines up. I think that at a certain point, there's no way you can force people to read. So that's unfortunate. I'm not saying that about this person. I'm just saying it's, I still haven't solved the lifelong mystery of how do we get information to people that are seeking the information. It's weird. It's weird when you have someone like they want to get the answer and you have the answer but no matter what, you just can't make the connection. And so then you start going, well, put the answer in 5 places. It's like, nope, CO2 regulator was in a different one I didn't check. It's hard. So that's why we use analytics and we study people all the time. What are most people doing? Oh, most people are looking here, we'll put it there. Most people are looking here, we'll put it there. I recently got a tank along with reef stuff, but I can't afford saltwater. So I want to see if I can use reef stuff in freshwater. Would the pH be okay for Celestial Pearl Danios or a betta? That's kind of a longer conversation in video. The short answer is could be. Long answer is depending on water changes and what your starting water was and how big the tank was, and yeah. Will 1 co-op light be enough for a 75-gallon CO2 injected tank? That's what I guess my par video is going to tell you. Yes and no. It all depends on what you're trying to do. So the easy answer is, yeah, probably, no problem. The long answer is, it depends. Like, I remember I had a customer, I'll never forget this guy, because he would do anything but listen to me. He would read online, and then come spend money in the store, and I would try and tell him, don't do that. And he wouldn't listen to me. So this is a guy that had a 120-gallon tank, and he wanted to plant a tank, and he was a reef guy. And so he would always say, I'm not worried about money. I just want it to work. I want it to work well. And, freshwater is so cheap compared to saltwater. I go, okay, cool. And so I tell him, like, yep, use Easy Green and, and use, for 120, use 2 Fluval 3.0 lights. And he wouldn't do that. Instead, he wanted to go EI dosing. And I go, okay, yep, great. We can do that, do the water changes, all that. Wanted to inject CO2. He ended up using 4 Fluval lights, and he could never get his drop checker to max out at 30 parts per million. And every week was nothing but frustration and testing and anger, and I don't get it. I bought all the things that's supposed to work. And eventually, like a month and a half later, after he had bought UV sterilizers and this and that, and just kept buying more and 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 more stuff, he finally listened, and I was like, great, turn off 2 of the lights, dial back the CO2, and use Easy Green. And shocker, it worked. Like, he would just not listen and wanted to buy more and more stuff and buy his way through it. And, so for that guy needs more than 1 light on his 75-gallon with CO2 injection, because that's what the internet's going to tell him. That being said, the guy had never kept a planted tank in his life, and reef tanks are so much harder than freshwater tanks, and freshwater will be easy, but it's like he didn't want to learn it. It's like, well, I read 7 books on how to play tennis. I don't understand why I'm not winning every tournament. It's like, well, you haven't practiced at all. And then he would go ask a professional, what should I do? And then he'd go, no, that's not what the books say. You didn't write a book. Get out of here. That's basically how that went down. So this video hopefully will help educate and go, okay, I can see, because it's going to teach you the par levels at different heights in the aquarium, what some of the plants might want, all of these kinds of things. Let's see here. There's a question I just saw that I wanted to answer. Do all plants need CO2? If no, do you have a video on which plants don't need it? All plants need CO2, but all water already has some CO2 in it. The difference you probably won't know is that most plants don't need injected CO2 in the form of a system. That would be known as kind of highlight, and then usually we denote if it needs lots of CO2 as well to thrive. That being said, like in Sunday's video you saw, I set up a tank with highlight and CO2, and then we also were growing the plant in the 40 breeder with no CO2 injection and poor light. So Notice while browsing the plant section of the website that many of the plants are duplicated in that list. Yeah, we've got a bug right now with like the infinite scrolling feature that will sometimes duplicate. I'm going to bring that up with the developers because it's sporadic. It doesn't always happen. So I wasn't sure if we had squashed the bug or if it was still actually there. I've bought several of the first generation of the Aquariumcoop heaters. Will the temperature still display after the EL feature happens? Yeah, it's going to switch between the two. Any idea will we be shipping to Australia again? I got a brine shrimp hatchery and some test strips, and I love the products. Most likely not. Doesn't mean we won't, but we would need some radical shifts in some of the shipping methods and stuff that exist currently today. And I think it's going to work out that we just find someone to carry our product in Australia and then ship from there is what's going to be a better long-term solution. Can we get a 30-second summary of what EI dosing is? Sure. EI stands for estimative index. And the premise is I'm gonna make a video, and if someone steals this, I'm totally gonna call them out on this. But I think the best way to explain a Planet tank is like baking a cake, because most people have seen that or know how it's done. But imagine you need to bake a cake, and instead of going, okay, I need 2 cups of flour, I need this much sugar, I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and you put it into proportion. That's what Easy Green's trying to do. We're like, Easy Green's like a cake mix. Instead, estimative index is, well, let me put in 50 pounds of flour, 50 pounds of sugar, 50 pounds of this, 50 pounds of this, 50 pounds of this, 50 pounds of this, and make this giant barrel and mix it all up. And then take out what you don't need. That's what EI is doing. So in an aquarium, you put a ton of nutrients in your, so let's say it's Monday. You put in, I'm just going to use some examples. Let's say 100 parts per million nitrates, phosphates, potassium, everything you need. You got 100 everything. And then at the end of the week, so now it's Sunday, you change a large portion of water, let's say 70% of the water, and try to remove a bunch of that out. Now it's Monday again. You put in 100 of everything again, and you do that every week. The goal is that your plants will never run out of what they need, and you'll never build it up because you're changing so much water. Ends up being a lot of work, and the problem is most people still run into lots of algae and everything because they're not getting things dialed in correctly, and it's a shortcut to, if I give it everything, it'll work, as opposed to I need to give it the right amount. And so, have I done EI dosing? I have. Do I like it? I don't. Do I think it's best for most people? I don't. Is it cheaper than Easy Green and stuff long term? Yeah. If you buy raw ingredients in bulk and you have a lot of tanks, it would be cheaper. Is it way more work? Yes. So that's my my 30-second pitch on that. I would love a co-op par meter. Yeah, I'm guessing we wouldn't make one because they're fairly expensive. I haven't looked into what it would cost for us to put one out, but the one I own was like $400 and some dollars. So I can't, even if we did everything we could, it's still probably $200 or $300 in the Aquariumcoop version, which I don't think we'd sell very many of those. Please add a section to the site that just shows everything Aquariumcoop or everything on the site except plants. Why? So there's 280 products. I don't see the logic in I want to dig through it all. Because you could just click through each section, and if you didn't click on a section with plants, I mean, I can see maybe just the Aquariumcoop products.
I'm not sure I understand. Is there something else I can help with?
She didn't understand Aquariumcoop products. How dare her? We've tested and we've had we've had that. So pre-proto, the data shows that not many people want to scroll in a never-ending scrolling situation of just products with no sorting. I believe you can do it by, let me think, how can you do that? I think if you just search like easy green, let me see. No, that's not gonna do it either. Let me, yeah. So if you use the search and you type in any product, it's gonna bring up a search result page. And then if you clear the little search and hit enter, it's gonna bring up all the products and you can scroll with no rhyme or reason to it like you want to. Which is not my preferred method. Let's see. I have 2 bristlenose plecos and a parapleco that's 6 inches long. I feed cucumbers and zucchini a few times a week and algae wafers. Anything else I should feed them? Yeah, probably lots more protein. They're definitely, you're feeding them lots of veggies, but with only the algae wafers, depending on how many you're feeding, I'd be trying to fit in like frozen bloodworms and other meaty things. They actually want quite a bit of protein. They're not quite getting that much. Winding down. Got 13 minutes left. You guys are running out of questions. Pros and cons of having having plants on top of your aquarium, like peace lily and things like that. I'd say the main pros are looks, and if you have plants that, or if you have fish that eat plants, it's a way to suck nutrients up. Otherwise, not a lot of other benefit compared to plants in your aquarium. So if you like the look, do it. If you have fish like Oscars and goldfish and maybe some other stuff that are tearing your plants up, that might be another reason if you want to lighten the water changes. Otherwise, do them underwater. Usually I want to look through all the products because shipping is such a pain. It's easier to get all in one batch, and sometimes with categories I miss something. All right. The site can be a bit of a pain. If I see all products in a category, I want to look at all fish supplies and click the main category. It's missing subcategory products. Yeah, I don't know. All I know is we're watching everyone's data and the way they use it, and we keep making choices based on what most people are doing. I think he's asking for a filter to just looking for plants and one of non-plants. Yeah, those are called categories. We do those. What are things to look out for with chloramine in the tap water? Chloramine. Mostly when you break down that chloramine, you're going to have some residual ammonia. Your filters will process that, but yeah, it's about the only thing to watch out for. Have you ever made a paludarium? Yes, we used to sell paludariums in the store. Aquatop used to make rad ones. They just stopped making them though. Don't listen, Corey. The website works fine. Oh, I know. The amount of money we put and the amount of analytics and stuff. You know, the thing that we run into continually with everything we do is no matter what we do, we can cater to 99% of the people, and 1% of the people will be angry that we haven't adapted it for them. And yeah, like what was another example of a good example? I don't know if it's a good example, but another example I can think of off the top of my head when I made the video about like getting out and enjoying fish stores and reconnecting with the hobby, trying to avoid burnout and things like that. someone left a comment like, I know what you're trying to say, but for people that are disabled, they can't do that. This video isn't relevant to them. And they said it in a long way and nicely, and I agree. And my answer is like, yes, not every video is for every person. If I make a video about rummy-nosed tetras and you're into breeding saltwater Bengal cardinals, that video was never meant for you. We only try to help as many people as we can, and not every video will do that. So, and same thing, like, if our main goal is to help people that are getting into the hobby, getting their first planet tanks going and things like that, we tailor the way the website experience is to that, as opposed to, we're not tailoring it to Dean of like, well, where's the breeding section and this and this and this. We are trying to serve a demographic and do that well. Now, can other people use the site? Sure, definitely can. But in general, we're trying to accomplish a goal. And if we know what the goal is, are these things helping us get there? That's the main goal. And yeah, we like to sell stuff too, but the main goal is to actually help and grow the hobby and then sell stuff. So I actually used the co-op website as an example of great UX design for a business class. It was one of the few websites all my classmates could agree on. Well, thank you. We've got, what you guys don't see is in the background, there's major changes coming that we've been working on for months, and we're going through design changes and QA, QC teams and all of that kind of stuff. And you'll start seeing some of that roll out. And, we're spending, I think at this point, with website design, not including like my time, I think we're around $25,000 a month between apps and designers and coders and things like that. And some of these projects takes months and months and months to deploy. And what you're not seeing as well is like, we have to develop multiple facets. So there's you guys who are shopping with us, but then there's also like the retail program, right? So we need to make sure that all the discounts and the wholesale stuff and all that stuff's working behind the scenes. Another way where you could view like most of the Aquarium Co-op products, right? If you just scroll to the bottom in the footer, there's the retail partner program, and click on the retail RPP product wholesale list. These are all the products that will wholesale to stores, so you could know what they could potentially buy from us. It's going to be all of our Aquarium Co-op stuff plus Fritz stuff. So there's all that going on. But then also we focus on another demographic, the people that will never buy from us. And that's, maybe they have their own good local fish store, maybe they live in a different country, and that would be the blog and the way those are surfacing and the way information's categorized and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of a lot of little facets we're working on, and if we do everything right, you guys won't really feel the change and know we've changed and we just made it better. If we do it wrong, there's some bugs and things like that, and if a lot of times we can make a change and no one likes change. So even if it's better, a lot of people complain at the beginning, not knowing that, well, the new people that come along, they'll love it. I'd love to see a fish and aquarium trends predictions of 2023. I don't think I'm doing that. I thought about, like, what am I going to do on the Christmas live stream? What am I going to do on the New Year's live stream? And then I thought, what is everybody else going to do on that day? And I'm like, everyone's going to do, like, here's my goals for 2023. Here's the trends, that kind of stuff. And mostly as I've done this stuff for years in the past, not a lot has changed. And I don't want to do the same thing. So I'm actually going to tell a story on the Christmas live stream. I don't know what I'm doing on the New Year's live stream yet, but I do know I'm telling quite a long story. I think it'll be a long story on the Christmas one. On a closed loop Ultima pump system, does location of the pump matter? I have mine in a corner and it doesn't seem like it's equal pressure. The problem with the Ultima pump system, I think those ones aren't linear air piston pump, even though they claim to be. They're diaphragm, and you kind of always get that problem. So the linear air piston pumps tend to keep more even pressure. The other thing you can run into is if you're running, so like let's say it's meant to run like 50 airdrops, depending on how deep the air has to go, how long the runs are, you might not be able to get them all. So usually when you're getting uneven pressure, it's a sign that you're towards the limit of your pump's capabilities. I miss the free stickers. I miss shipping being half as much as it used to be 5 years ago. New Year's dog fashion show. That sounds likely. I always go to the physical store to pick up products, but I use the website to create a shopping list so I don't forget things. I find it's really easy to use. Yeah, that might be something we work on long term. A buy online, pick up in store feature that's seamless. I don't know a lot of companies that do it very well, and so that's where I'm still studying. I don't want it to be like, for me, when I buy something online I want to pick up in store, I basically want to order it and drive straight there and pick it up. It's not the like, well, we'll let you know in 1 to 6 million hours when it might be ready or might not. All the ambiguity needs to be taken out. Half the reason people would go to a retail store is they need it now, they want to get it now, they want to go back and work on their thing. So I need to eliminate all those steps, and a lot of times you'll see we're slow to adopt things because we want to do it right. And I watch a lot of places adopt things pretty quick and then do a poor job of it. And it takes us a long time to figure out what is the answer. Because it's easy to copy. If you know the answer out there, like, oh, well, let's do that. But when no one's found the great way to do it yet, a lot of time thinking, go, well, that worked? Ooh, that's going to be the problem with that answer. Co-op Prime? Nope. I was admiring at the genius level of Amazon, like yesterday, the day before. The Prime card that saves 5% off everything on Amazon Prime, the genius in it is that they just charge the person selling the product the 5%. So like it's another layer of like why I don't want to sell on Amazon. So imagine this coin right here. It's $7.99 on our website. And if we put it on Amazon for you to buy it, if you use your Amazon credit card, you're going to save 5%. Well, they just charge us more fees to sell it on Amazon. So by us selling it on our website and Amazon, you're already incentivized to buy it on Amazon. You're going to save 5% compared to on our website. We're going to make way less money and things like that. And so they've kind of got this ridiculous racket going on that's pretty impressive that they've built over time. And it's impressive, just that how well they've leveraged everything. They're like, wow, that ecosystem. So like that whole Prime ecosystem, like that's a hard thing to replicate. And I think a lot of people don't understand the stranglehold they've been able to build. That being said, they can undo it if they don't, if they don't get on top of the reviews and that kind of stuff and just kind of the BS they've got going on. They'll never, they'll never make it long term. But, I was actually thinking about doing a live stream on how people have lost touch with money in the terms of like social media, the news, and people. Like I'm on vacation, I'm watching people talking about like Elon Musk and Twitter and Facebook and this, and I'm just listening in. I'm going, I'm like, yes, what you're saying is technically true, but you're forgetting the amounts of money that people have. If you lose, they're going, oh, he sold $3.7 billion worth of stock. And it's like, and what percentage of his portfolio was that? Oh, he didn't even think twice. Like, it didn't matter. And people forget, like, as much as they're like, Facebook's going to fail, they forget that it's one of the most widely used platforms. It's used by pretty much all businesses. Its app install rate is insane. And like, even though it's getting negative press, people don't think critically about it. So like, oh, but everyone doesn't like Facebook right now. It's going to go out of business. Like, how many people here like Comcast? everyone hates them, and yet everyone's still using them, and they don't have nearly the adoption rate that like Facebook has. And so the example I used to explain for my wife was, even if we all decided as a family that we weren't going to use Facebook anymore, how difficult is it to get my grandmother off of Facebook and onto a new platform so that she can talk with the family? It's crazy difficult. We're not even buying her a new TV because the difficulty of learning the new remote control and that kind of thing, the headache when you're 90 years old, isn't worth it. And so that kind of adoption rate of, in a world where we live right now, where in theory nobody's got cable and no one has a landline anymore. My grandma has both. So does my aunt. So does a lot of people. And so even a company like Comcast that everybody hates still makes it still profitable and all of that. And so even if you waste a bunch of money on the metaverse and that kind of stuff, Facebook's not going anywhere. Just like, a lot of Elon Musk stuff and a lot of this, it's big money and it's headlines and everything. But the reality is there's so much money around, you can afford to fail like 20 times over and you're still going to be relevant. Same with Amazon and a lot of these companies that, people love to talk about it, but it's really hard to conceptualize money in billions, because when you really look at it, we as a normal human can't, like, let me see if I can Google it real quick. Like how much is a Ferrari percentage of income for a billionaire? Let's see if I can find that. Because it gets crazy when you can actually see the comparisons where the decision, if you have billions of dollars, the decision to buy a Ferrari is the same as you deciding whether you're going to buy a cup of coffee today. Like, that's the impact of the money. And when you think about it like that, that's when you start going, oh, so the extra $1 million home that you're going to buy is equivalent to going out to dinner tonight? It's the money is so exponentially hard to grasp. That's what I think, that's the big difference for people. It's hard to even imagine how much money it is. Like, that's, yeah. Yeah, 100, so a billion is equal to 100 million. And then let's imagine you just put your $1 billion. If you just put $1 billion into a CD right now, which is like at 4%, you'll make $4 million a year. It's that easy. So you start getting, and that's 1 billion. You start getting into hundreds of billions. That's where it starts just getting to crazy. Why would someone wish Facebook would die? Because old people use it? No, some of the talking points would be misinformation, just in general, like, there's a natural cycle to technology. Something's big and then it busts, so the boom bust cycle and that kind of stuff. And people love to talk about things they're familiar with, but just because they're familiar with it doesn't mean that they understand it. I'm the number one example of it. I talk about a lot of stuff and I try to back off of things that I don't understand. And then I try to research more into it. But, something like Twitter at 44 billion, right? Even if it fails, like, what is his current net worth? It's gone down a bunch, but it's 169 billion, right? So even if he just ran to the ground tomorrow, he's still left with 120 billion. Still more money than he'll ever be able to spend in his lifetime. The reality is, he could buy Twitter and fail it 4 times and still have a few billion and never be able to spend in his lifetime. So that's, where when they talk about these kind of things, it's like, oh, this is going to be the end of this person. And it's like, but will it? Because at the end of it all, if I still have a few billion, I'm still better than basically the rest of the world. So anyway. I don't like Facebook because of its severe privacy issues. It poses unique risks to me. Yeah, I mean, I would say most everything you do in life has that problem. There's definitely some reform that we could use on all kinds of privacy issues, on owning your own personal data and things like that. It's another reason why I don't even want to have an app. I don't really want to have to manage what's going to be coming down the pipeline. I don't want to, just add more complications. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. If you're still here and you haven't yet, go to our website and sign up for the giveaway. We're doing a giveaway every month. So basically, the way it works is if you sign up, you'll be in the giveaway, and as long as you click you'll eventually get an email. And when you click the enter the giveaway at least once a month and read one of our articles, you'll be in it. And so by signing up today, you'll have a chance to win a $500 gift card. And then as long as you open and click that button once a month, you could win next month and the month after and the month after. So see if I can find that. Someone will find that link, but that's a pop-up on the website and everything. So we're just trying to give away some gift cards and build our newsletter list and keep communication going and all of that. So if YouTube goes away tomorrow, we'll have a way to contact you and go, hey, we're over here doing this thing. I don't necessarily like Facebook, but I use it for business. Yep, and that's a stranglehold that only Facebook has. Like, there are a lot of businesses that don't even have a website, but they have a Facebook page. And that infrastructure is not going away for a long time. Even if you had the next best thing, it would take 5 years to replace it. Any tips on photographing fish? Get yourself a fast camera. So maybe something like a RX100 from Sony. Get it right up against the glass and spend time. It takes hours. On average, maybe 1 to 2 hours per good photo you'd want to share. There's a difference of getting a picture, and there's a different version of like getting a good picture. Let's see. The giveaway page. Let me see if I can find that. It can't be that hard to find. Just gotta bring up. And then I gotta go watch a movie. What are we calling it? Giveaway. That's care package giveaway rules. That's that. Sweepstakes. What do we call this one? This is a good radio right here. Looking up in my email. All right, Candy's got it. Phew, beat me. Put them in an Aquariumcoop specimen container and take a picture? Yeah. Shutter speed is key? Yeah, that's where the fast camera thing comes in. You also need something that can, in my opinion, autofocus fairly quickly. I have taken pictures with manual focus, and it is doable. But learning that skill of manual focus, it's not even using a manual focus ring. It's mostly head movement with your aquarium. But what I find for amateurs is once you're moving your head and a camera away from the aquarium, you're introducing glares. And so if you can just get a fast shutter camera, something like an RX100 or what's the I'm trying to think of the Canon one that could do it too, but yeah, it's a whole thing. Here's my takeaway. To get good photos at an entry level that's beyond your cell phone, you're looking at probably $500 camera. So if you buy the correct one and you spend some time, you can get some great shots. There's obviously, I don't have any sitting here, but then there's I've got 5 grand worth of equipment to take pictures as well. And yes, it's better and easier, but that's not applicable to the average hobbyist. I think the average hobbyist could save up, spend $500 to $700 and get a good camera and make that a new hobby of theirs. And then down the road, then they could, upgrade. But yeah, a lot of learning and learn what to do and what to not to do. And then you could evaluate if you want to spend a bunch of money on that hobby, which I don't, because I find it's really fun to get the first few pictures. And then you're like, this is a lot of work. So, All right. I got to go watch a movie. I will see you guys next Sunday. We'll see you in the next videos. Thanks for hanging out. Buy all of our stuff. Request your family to buy your gifts from us for Christmas. We'll get it shipped out lickety split. And have a good time. Enjoy nature out there. Work on your aquarium.